Hey folks, it's Steve. Chad and I put together a show this past weekend on Disney's purchase of the Global Dream, which was announced last Wednesday, November 16th. Of course, we all know what happened on Sunday where Mr. Chapek, Bob Chapek, was replaced by Bob Iger as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And of course, it was under Mr. Chapek's leadership that the Global Dream was purchased. So at this point, we do not know if this purchase is actually going to go through. But there's been some good speculation. If you listen to Len Testa and Jim Hill over on Jim Hill Media, they were talking about it today in a podcast that was released. This is November 23rd, and kind of their speculation as to whether they think that the project will go through or not. Irregardless, Chad and I had a good time recording this and taking a look at it. If the project does go through, then maybe this will have some relevancy. And if it doesn't, well, you know, sometimes things change, and you put together podcasts that don't quite fit the bill. So I hope you enjoy this look at what we know so far of the purchase of the Global Dream, the makeup of it, and kind of the history of the company that was behind it before it went bankrupt. So I want to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving as we head into the Thanksgiving holidays this week. And once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. And now, as they say, on with the show. Well, hello, and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little smarter. And we are turning our focus on something completely different today. And to help me do this, the man himself up in Wisconsin that helped break this story. Welcome back to the show. Good friend of the show, Chad. How you doing today?
I am good, Steve. Excited to be talking about this new 8th Disney cruise ship. This is pretty exciting.
Exactly. And it was like a couple of months ago. Was it October or September? You found the article over there and I can't even say the Develt or something like that. I can't remember. It's the newspaper up in Hamburg where they had an article in it.
Yeah, so I happen to follow a lot of Meyer Werft groups and things on social media, and happened to run across this, and it was the first that I'd seen of it, and it was probably maybe a couple of days. Like I posted it in our Patreon group, and I think I sent it to you directly, and said, "Hey, look at this," and it was the first I'd seen of anything like that. And it seemed like that started to pick up some steam over the next couple of days. Next thing you knew, all of a sudden the news and the smoke was coming from everywhere that this was a real thing. And I think, as we might talk about here in a minute, I have a feeling this has probably been in the works for a while, but it was just really starting to break, and some of those whispers starting early in October.
And it's good news in a lot of ways for a lot of people, because as we were just talking now, we'll jump into who owned the Global Dream ahead of time before Disney just recently purchased it. But it's going to have ramifications of not only workers in Germany, but all of us who sail with Disney Cruise Line as well, because a lot of those workers were actually laid off right now when this company went bankrupt that was originally building the Global Dream. But before we even jump into that, and I totally lost my train of thought as to where I was going to go. But yeah, I know you follow this stuff quite a bit, and it's super exciting to see this. I know where I was going to go with this. Basically, I think what you said a little bit earlier before we jumped on was that some of the bankruptcy stuff had to go through before it could officially happen. And so I think that's what kind of they were working through the legal channels and processes before they could turn over ownership of this ship.
Yeah, that's my impression of it, because I think the final bankruptcy didn't go through until October. So I have a feeling that, again, this is probably in motion for a while. They were actively seeking a buyer for this from multiple places, and Disney, I think, as we'll talk, the ship. When you read some of the things that Genting or Dream Cruises were going to do with this ship, there's a whole lot of similarities to the way that Disney basically fits their ships out, right? With the different types of cabins and amenities and things like that. There's a lot of similarities where you could see why this was an attractive thing for Disney Cruise Line.
And I think this is a once in a lifetime kind of thing too for Disney Cruise Line, taking a look at it. I know there's been some consternation, I guess, on Twitter. Some people are not too excited about it. It doesn't fit their brand, whatever. But I am not an expert in the airline industry or whatsoever, but planes get bought and sold all the time where companies will buy a plane, and for whatever reason they can't end up they buy positions of planes. Obviously there's a lot more planes being built than ships, and so American will buy these 5 orders right here, and at some point maybe they can't hold on to them, so they sell them over to somebody else. And when that other person gets those planes, they get those planes built as American airlines ordered them. And so when which just happened to us recently, we took ownership of a couple different American Airlines 737 Maxes. And so then our company has to go and take the planes and remodify them into the way we fly them and the different components and electronics and everything else. And that's what's eventually going to happen here with this one with Disney as well. So it's kind of an interesting situation to watch this on a much bigger scale, I guess, from my point of view.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, I think I posted this in our Patreon group that, I think this allows Disney an opportunity to do something totally different from how they've had with previous ships. So certainly there will be a lot of themes and things that will carry over from the ships that we already know and love. But I think it allows them, space to do something completely different, given that this is, almost certainly going to be a one-off ship for them. I don't see them going out and commissioning additional designs that are going to be like this. So this is going to be sort of a one of a kind thing for Disney that I think they can really kind of go in some neat different directions, which could be really fun.
And I'm sure they got a really good price on it, which is the main reason why they're kind of going through with this. And like you said, a different design, which I think we can speculate at the end where she's going to be. But I think because of where she was being built for, there's a lot of things already built into it that hopefully will help them succeed in that part of the world. So what do we know? Okay, on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, Disney Cruise Line officially announced that they will soon be bringing the magic of a Disney vacation to new global destinations by announcing their plans to purchase and complete building the ship previously known as the Global Dream in Wismar, Germany. So, and as we're kind of talking about, this is great news because the shipyard in Wismar had basically been shut down and all the workers laid off once Genting Hong Kong went bankrupt earlier this year. And the ship was at that point approximately 85% built. With this news of Disney coming in and taking over the rebuilding of the ship or continue to build the ship, a lot of those workers are going to go back to work. And that's exciting news over in Germany, I know.
For sure.
So let's talk about who Genting Hong Kong is. You've got a little bit information on that, Chad.
Yeah, so Genting Hong Kong was a part of the larger Genting Group, which is just a massive company. Genting Hong Kong actually owned 3 cruise lines. The first of which was Star Cruises, who actually the Global Dream was actually initially commissioned for or ordered for. They also owned Crystal Cruises and Dream Cruises. And then you've mentioned a couple times the MV Werften shipbuilders. So they and MV Werften owned 3 or operated, I should say, 3 different shipyards. So one in Rostock, one in Wismar, and then what was the third? I forget.
Stralsund.
Stralsund, yes. I'm not sure what the status of Stralsund is, but when Genting Hong Kong went bankrupt in March of 2022, and they started to liquidate those assets, Rostock was actually sold off to the German Navy. So the German Navy will now own the Rostock and outfit their ships out of there. Wismar was actually sold to a company called, I'm probably going to screw up the name of this, ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. They'll actually start assuming operations there in 2024. And they previously had made some arrangements to basically say, okay, listen, we'll allow someone to finish the Global Dream at the facility, but prior to us starting up operations. So to your point, this is great news for all those employees that were there that eventually will become employees, it sounds like, of the ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. And now they've got a stopgap in between where they can work for Meyer Werft under this new, it sounds like a new name that they're actually going to call it Meyer Wismar. They'll be able to work for them for a couple of years before they eventually move over to working for ThyssenKrupp.
When I was kind of looking at it too about Genting Hong Kong, at one point they actually owned Norwegian Cruise Line as well, and before they sold, or a large portion of it.
That's right. I forgot about that. And I'll tell you what, as I look at some of the older, I mean, there's like 2016 and 2017 ships that Dream Cruises operated, they look a ton like the Norwegian Breakaway class. One of those ships actually was sold off to, it sounds like a new holding company called Resorts World Cruises, which actually is owned by the same guy that kind of owned the Genting Hong Kong. And then the other one, the World Dream, is right now they don't have a buyer for it yet. So I keep looking at that thing saying, man, this thing looks like a Norwegian cruise ship. I wonder if you could see Norwegian buy that thing. But it's right now, that's just anchored right now off the coast of Singapore and not doing a thing right now. So they're still looking for a buyer for that ship.
So let's look a little bit more deeper into Genting and the ships that they have right now, at least. And I hope that we're saying that right. I believe it's Genting. So if anybody else knows differently, please let us know. But as you said, Genting owned 3 different ships initially. They own the Genting, the World, and the Explorer Dream, 3 different ships. The Genting and the World were roughly the size of the Disney Dream and Fantasy, just a little bit bigger than that. And then the Explorer was actually a little bit smaller than the Magic and the Wonder. So let's put this into just a little perspective here as we kind of bounce around a bit. But the Dream and the Fantasy are about 130,000 tons. They carry about 4,000 passengers, 1,458 crew. The Magic and Wonder are about 84,000 tons, 2,713 passengers, 945 crew. And then the Disney Wish is roughly in the same ballpark as the Dream and the Fantasy. When we look at the Global Dream, though, the Global Dream is actually 208,000 tons and was originally built to hold 6,000 passengers and around 2,300 crew. And we'll get into a little bit minutia there. So she is quite a bit bigger than the Dream, the Fantasy, and the Wish.
I did a little math, and now I'm not great at math, but I did a little math. And at 208,000 gross tons, that would be 91% of if you jammed a Magic class and Dream class ship together as far as overall gross tons. So this thing is a massive vessel. So if it were to come out today, it would actually be the 7th largest cruise ship in the world, behind the 5 Oasis class ships and then the MSC World Europa, which launched this year. There are a few others that are on order right now that will probably deliver before this new ship comes out for Disney. There's another Oasis class called Utopia of the Seas that should be out in 2023. Icon of the Seas also should be out in 2023. MSC World America, so sort of a second version of that World Europa, will be out in 2025. So maybe depending on when this thing delivers. And then certainly the second Icon class in 2025 also. But it's going to come out amongst the giants of the seas at this point, as far as cruise ships go. So it's one of just a handful that are over that 200,000 gross tons limit.
So for us Disney kind of people that have just been sailing around on Disney Cruise Line in our little dinghies out there, I guess, you and your family have actually sailed on an Oasis class ship. What is that like to be on a ship that big? What's your kind of takeaway?
So we were on Oasis of the Seas back in January for a week. And I mean, I think any new ship that you go on takes some getting used to. What I'll say is that after a couple of days, you start to learn kind of where things are. Royal does a really nice job sort of breaking things into neighborhoods. So once you kind of figure out, okay, kind of here's where this goes, here's where that goes, it's fairly easy to navigate. At the same time, it's a lot of space to cover. There's no getting around that, right? There's just a lot of places to go. Multiple pools, multiple, bars and restaurants and neighborhoods and things like that. There's a lot to it. So, and when you look at kind of what this ship is going to wind up being, it draws a lot of inspiration on design from those Oasis class ships with those sort of open air, areas in the middle of the ship, sort of the wide beam on these ships. And if you were sort of looking at it from, a mile away, you wouldn't be able to tell whether it was an Oasis class ship or whether it was this until they put those red Disney funnels on top. And then it becomes unmistakable for whose it is.
So instead of having neighborhoods, they'll have kingdoms on the ship, maybe.
They just might.
I want to get into, you were talking about like some of the different inspirations they brought, but let's talk about before we get into that, what some of the inspirations that you can see in this ship, kind of looking at because there's actually a lot of YouTube footage about this ship. If you go back and look at it from this original design concept to, showing you what the rooms are going to look like and even like kind of walkthroughs through the ship itself. But originally, the Global Dream was built the plan for it was to sail from Chinese ports in the summer and then further into Oceania. So think like Australia, maybe down into the South Pacific, and eventually over to the West Coast for the rest of the year. The ship was also planned to use artificial intelligence and robots for customer-facing services with an extensive use of voice and face recognition. I think I talked a little bit later on, but they were going to use that to really, you think about like how many people get into and off of these ships. That was going to be one of the ways that they were going to be able to board and disembark people as quickly as they could. And I'm not sure, did you guys use a lot of that facial recognition when you did Oasis of the Seas?
No, it's not so much on there. I think, is it Celebrities doing some of that? So Oasis of the Seas obviously is the oldest of the Oasis class ships at this point. It did go through what they called their Royal, I forget the name of whatever their upgrade program was, where they were going through and rehabbing all the older ships to put on some of the newer amenities. But there's no facial recognition stuff or anything like that on board yet.
So I think they were going to use that. And I would assume that a lot of that's already been built into. And if it has been built into it already, then I think Disney would run with that to hopefully, really, make things move smoothly around the ship and maybe getting onto and off of it as well. The build was roughly 85% complete when DCL bought her. So the ship, the Global Dream, was roughly about 85% complete. So let's talk about the ship itself, and we'll talk about some of those inspirations that you noticed. She's roughly 342 meters long, 46.4 meters wide. I should have pulled up the Disney ones, but she is very wide. And the only time I've seen an Oasis class ship was when we were in Tortola or St. Thomas years ago on the Fantasy. And like you said, from the side, it doesn't look that different, but man, when you see her from the front and back, like how much wider it is and just how much more space there is, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're massive. Like we had docked next to, I believe it was Odyssey of the Seas, which is bigger than the Dreamer Fantasy, but not absurdly bigger. If you were to see them, kind of by themselves. When you looked at the back of those two ships, kind of from like I was over at the on the Coco Key water slides area, so you had a great view of those two ships and stuff that were out there at this big water slide tower. It looks like it's at least 50% wider than what Odyssey of the Seas is. It's just these things are just massively wide.
This part I didn't totally understand, but she originally was built to accommodate between 5,000 and 6,000 passengers in 2,500 cabins on a twin share basis. I'm not sure exactly what that meant.
I think that means double occupancy. So
okay.
So meaning they've got basically enough 2,500 or so cabins that will fit those. If you're going to have two people in each cabin, then you have that sort of 5,000 to 6,000 person limit in there. And then when you start talking about triple and quad occupancy, that's where it started pushing. Hey, we can take as many as 9,000 as far as light boats go and things like that.
Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so during the regular sailings during the year, probably about 5,000 to 6,000 passengers, and then they were saying during the peak holiday sailings, because everybody keeps hearing that 9,000. I think that really freaks people out. So that 9,000 is really adding the 3 and maybe 3 and 4. But I mean that's who sails Disney, right? It's not as well. Sometimes we get to go as couples, but it's the families with your kids as well. So definitely probably be pushing past that 6,000 on this ship. Disney has stated, though, that their max capacity would be planned at 6,000. Now, this part I thought was kind of interesting. She has 20 decks featuring a spa, a park, which I know the Oasis class ships have that outdoor park in the center part of the ship, a Cineplex, an amusement park, a water park, sun deck, sports facilities, a disco, and of course, restaurants and bars. They have 28 large elevators compared to what is a Wish got. I can't remember. They only have the 2 bays there.
Yeah, I meant to look that up before we came on, but I want to say there's probably 16, maybe. I'm trying to think if there's 8 in each bank. I bet something like that. Something like that.
8 sets of escalators to connect the public areas. And then also, let's talk about some of those similarities that you've seen. And let's start with like that split bathroom idea that you saw as well.
Yeah, I was saying before we started, I mean, if you came to me and said, hey, I'm going to talk to you about a ship with large family style accommodations that have a privacy curtain that kind of goes between the two, split bathrooms so that you and your family can kind of get ready in different times and stuff like that, a multiplex cinema, you would assume that you're talking about a Disney ship. I mean, automatically. Now, they smartly put the TV across from the sofa. I thought that was an innovative design choice, considering the Wish. But as I looked at videos and have seen more stuff about this ship, I think this thing really draws a lot of inspiration from a lot of US based cruise lines. They showed dining venue after dining venue after dining venue, which is really reminiscent of what you see on Norwegian Cruise Line, to some degree also on Royal Caribbean. The cabins, as we talked about, are unmistakably very Disney, with that partition between the two and sort of the split bathroom design. The ship looks like an Oasis class ship, so drawing a lot of inspiration from the Royal Caribbean fleet. And then they also talked about their suite class a lot, and I forget what they called it, but this sort of ship in a ship design really seems to be really reminiscent of what Norwegian does with their Haven suites, where they've got sort of like, hey, you've got all these different amenities here right within this little group of cabins, and you could almost basically live your entire cruise within this space if you really wanted to. So it seems like they're really drawing a lot of inspiration from some of the best parts of those US-based cruise lines to try and introduce those, or this is what they were trying to do, I should say, for the Asian market.
I love that idea of the Haven. I thought maybe that's the way Disney was going with the Wish, and they didn't quite reach that level.
Yeah, not quite. At some point, I'm gonna get into the Haven one of these days.
Yeah, same here too. Anything else about just kind of the overview of the Global Dream itself that we haven't talked about, Shad?
No, I think you talked a lot about so the one thing that I did see You talked about the elevators. How about the escalators? This was going to be the first ship at sea with there's going to be 8 sets of escalators on this thing. And I when I talked to my wife about that, she was ecstatic about this, number one, just because she doesn't like taking the elevators anyway. We usually wind up taking the stairs, which, is fine until you've got to haul luggage up and down those said stairs, either for early disembarkation or trying to get to your room or whatever you're doing. I love the idea of having escalators on there. I hope Disney leaves those.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is going to be, I think a lot of the nuts and bolts are going to be kind of there, and then they're going to add some touches around it with their Disney-esque touching, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. But I was kind of joking with you earlier that with this kind of mall, shopping district and everything like that, they were going to have to hire Paul Bart from Mall Cops to kind of police the ship, keep everybody in order out there with their escalators and all that stuff. But no, I'm excited to see it.
Let's get the segue ready.
Exactly.
Paul Blart's and has got to have a segue going through the mall.
For those of you who saw Mall Cop.
And I'll tell you what, with all the high-end retail that we've now found on the Wish, there's plenty of space for all of that on the new Disney, whatever this is going to be.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about the shipyard. Let's go back to the shipyard a little bit again. So MV Werften, which I did not realize until you kind of educated me, was actually owned by Genting Hong Kong. And so, as you said, it consisted of 3 shipyards, Wismar, Rostock, Stralsund, Germany. We kind of talked about that there. Some interesting things about this shipyard is that they have some of the largest docks and covered fabrication facilities in Europe. They were known as having some state-of-the-art software and other automation to make MV Werften one of the most efficient cruise ship builders in the world. And in their 70-year history, they had built over 2,500 seagoing vessels, including 2 cruise ships for AIDA, AIDA, which is a German cruise line over there, and numerous river cruise vessels and ferry lines as well. So they've got a lot of experience with that. As you were talking about, underneath the construction of the ship, what Disney has announced that the construction will be completed at the former MV Werften shipyard in Wismar, Germany, under the management of Meyer Werft, the Papenburg-based company that has built the Disney Dream, Fantasy, and Wish, and who's currently building the Treasure. So basically, by bringing Meyer Werft in there, that really brings a continuity. They've just built the Wish, they built the Dream and the Fantasy. They kind of know what Disney likes, and that's going to be able to probably smooth things out as they complete this vessel.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I don't believe that they're going to be sending any of the workforce, from Papenburg over to Wismar. So I think it's really just more of a management aspect that they'll be sort of leading the charge there. To your point, the interface with Disney, sort of setting the design and things like that, while they really leverage the folks that have been out of work in the Wismar area.
So what did Disney announce here last Wednesday? I guess we could just go, do you want to do each one, or do you want to go back and forth? Or
why don't you take the first 4 and then I'll take the next ones or something? Okay.
I'll take ABC, DD, or something like that.
Right, so sounds good.
Do you know a little bit about the green methanol, right?
No, I actually was trying to look that up a little bit too. What I wanted to find out was is anybody else sailing with the green methanol, and I haven't found that yet.
Okay.
Now the one piece is that these ships were outfitted to run on diesel. So I saw a couple of comments on Twitter about, oh, hey, I think they'll be able to work with LNG. I don't think that's the case, because I think that they need to keep those LNG tanks have to be super cooled, and I don't think it's got the ability to once you basically box the ship in with all those, when you start building with the blocks and stuff like that, there's no way of getting those things back out or putting something else that's that large in.
Yeah, I think it's a completely different technology, but we'll have to circle back and keep following along in the podcast, and we'll eventually get into a little bit smarter on this green methanol technology and everything like that. If anybody knows anything about green methanol technology, you want to come on and educate us, we'd love to have you on. Okay, so what did they announce this last Wednesday? That Disney Cruise Line is going to purchase and complete the building of the Global Dream. The ship will be renamed, with certain features reimagined under the world-renowned expertise of the Disney Imagineers, and the new ship will be based outside of the United States. Want to speculate on that quick?
I mean, it almost certainly wound up being in the Asia region. Possibly could go to Europe. I don't know. It seems like their intention is to really try and grow in that side of the world. I mean, the Wonder is going to be heading to, the South Pacific here was it next year? The intention seems to be to try and grow more of the market share there. There's already 2 parks in the Asia region. Seems like this is an area that Disney wants to grow.
And we were kind of talking about it before, Norwegian kind of they built a ship specifically for the Asian market, the Joy, and then Royal built one too, right? To us specifically.
So I looked that up. So they sent Quantum of the Seas over there, and then there was another one, Spectrum of the Seas, I believe, also went over there. I don't think that since COVID, they've now since brought them back, but I don't know if the intention is for that to be permanent or not, or whether they're going to dip their toes back over there. Now, Spectrum, I think, did start in Asia. Quantum did not. Quantum started out in New York originally. So the question becomes now, what's Royal's plan for once we move into a post-COVID world? I'm not quite sure yet.
So not to throw any shade on Norwegian, but they actually built the Joy specifically to sail in Asia, and they quickly pivoted, and I'm not sure exactly why they pivoted as to whether they weren't filling the ship up, but they brought it back because the Bliss was doing so well up in Alaska, and they brought the Joy back, and Joy is not, and refitted everything, took out a lot of restaurants and shopping that they had planned for the Asian market, and put in actually more bars, because I guess that's what we do, is we drink.
They spent a ton of money refitting that ship too. Interestingly, though, did not change the paint job on it, which looks very, very... So if folks are familiar with Norwegian ships, they do a lot of hull art, as they call it. And sometimes that then, for where they redeploy their ships to, puts them a little bit out of sync. So you'll wind up seeing like the Breakaway, when it launched, was billed as New York's ultimate ship, right? And it's got the Statue of Liberty and all kinds of New York icons and stuff all over the hull. And now that thing sails in Europe, I think. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a mismatch sometimes for how when they put this hull art on there for where they're going to launch the ship, but then a few years later it winds up going someplace else, and then it just seems a little bit disconnected a little bit. So
I'm with you. I think the speculation would probably be this for the ship to be based. Well, I don't know if "based" is the right word, but to sail in Asia. And I think that Disney's probably gonna have a little bit better luck than maybe NCL did with the Joy. I mean, you look at the parks are highly successful over there. People love the parks, from Japan to Hong Kong to now China. And so I think that if they do some of the touches over there that meet the needs of the passengers over in Asia and kind of fix the ship that way a little bit, I think that they're not going to have a hard time being able to fill it over there. Well, I don't want to speculate on whether they can be able to fill it, but I think they're going to be pretty successful over there, I guess, is my guess.
I think so too. I mean, it's to your point, the parks are packed over there. The market is growing there. I'd like to see Disney obviously be successful. I wouldn't mind maybe if it came back here for a year or two just for us to try it out, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe she'll come into San Diego or something like that for a couple of sailings or something. I don't know. We'll see, is like you said. So D, you want to take that one?
Okay, so it's going to feature innovative Disney experiences along with dazzling entertainment, world-class dining, the legendary guest services that sets Disney Cruise Line apart. So I think that's really what Disney's known for, is really the service piece of this. And I think you'll see all of that when the ship debuts. The exterior will be adorned in the iconic Mickey Mouse-inspired colors of the fleet, including the Monica Blue hull, as we know, and the yellow lifeboats that they had to get special permission from the U.S. Coast Guard. I assume they'll get it from whatever Coast Guard they'll be sailing over in other parts of the world. And then, of course, the signature red funnels, which, when we first saw the initial design that had come out from Disney, we were like, whoa, there's 3 funnels, only to realize there are 6 funnels that are on this thing. So how many funnel suites do you think we'll have on this ship, Steve?
I don't know. But the kids club is going to be amazing in there if they have like different kids clubs and break them down, if each one of them has their own funnel as well. So yeah, I don't know. That's like a whole nother topic in and of itself. I'm kind of curious. I think Concierge Chris is sailing. Well, I know he's sailing on the Wish with his family, and I think they're sailing in a funnel suite. So I'm kind of curious to kind of follow him on Twitter and see what he thinks about that funnel suite. So
got to get him back on the show to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, it is pretty amazing to see 6 funnels.
It's so as I looked at the initial designs that were done for Dream Cruises, that part of the upper deck where those funnels are going to be placed looks like they're probably going to need to remove some things from that space at this point. So either removing like a deck or something like that to be able to sort of have more of that space to be able to put those funnels on there. And I know that you've been speaking to somebody at Meyer Werft and stuff also. There's a lot of work for Disney to do here. It's going to be a big project.
I'll take this next one because I kind of dabbled in a little bit, but it will be among the first in the cruise industry to be fueled by green methanol, one of the lowest emission fuels available. And as we kind of talked about this, when we sailed the Baltic several years ago on Norwegian, the Baltic has gone to, like when the Magic was going up there and sailing up there, she has to use special fuel. She can't use the regular. There's like a higher quality diesel fuel that she has to use when she's sailing in the Baltic because of the restrictions where they're trying to reduce carbon emission. It's pretty much all LNG in the Baltic area. And so I think just the nature of the shipping industry is going this way, to be more carbon neutral and to find fuels alternative fuels outside of oil and reduce emissions, because there's a lot of areas of the world that are starting to require it. And the Baltic was like one of the first ones. I can see the Med eventually doing it as well.
Yeah, I was happy to see that they weren't going to revert back to diesel after having moved to LNG and that sort of cleaner burning fuels for the ships. I'll say that we've stayed a couple of times in those aft-facing rooms on the Dream and the Fantasy. There have been times where we couldn't even be out on our balcony because the heavy diesel fumes, especially when we're coming into port, like just the smoke coming from the stacks and stuff like that was practically coming down onto our balcony. So we couldn't even like stay out there to sort of watch ourselves dock. Because of the way that things were going. I was really pleased when they moved to LNG to say, okay, hey, maybe now we can give those staterooms a try because the view is amazing from back there. So seeing them, when we first started talking about this ship and, the tech that was on board, as I mentioned, these do have, diesel generators and stuff that are on the ship. I was really pleased to see that they could convert over to this green methanol, which would be a little bit cleaner burning than what you would get from a diesel.
So green methanol is a low carbon fuel that can be made from either biomass gasification or renewable electricity and captured carbon dioxide. I'm just going to leave it at that. Maersk, which is one of the biggest shipping lines that is moving, you'll see, like living here on the West Coast near a port city, you see a lot of the Maersk containers, Maersk. It's a Dutch company, and they move basically shipping containers around the world all over the place. Is actually partnering with the Red River Energy, corn to ethanol in South Dakota. So this is not, it's not just like one area of the world where they're going to be able to produce this type of stuff. I think it's going to be all over the place, and it's going to be coming from very interesting places. I thought that was interesting. Like the middle of the country, basically South Dakota, is where they're partnering to get some of their energy for their upcoming ships.
Global supply chain, Steve, as we all have found out over the last year or so, the supply chain very global.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned this in one of the articles I was reading, basically said this is the best path forward right now towards zero carbon emissions. So I think that's pretty exciting for the shipping industry to do that. Okay, so that's a little bit about what Disney announced. So I don't have actual sources for all of it, but I know that these are some things that we've heard on Twitter, and I hate to say heard on Twitter, but from reputable people on Twitter and everything like that. I know Scott Sanders over at the Disney Cruise Line blog talked about a couple of these things, but this ship is not going to replace the Treasure. The 3 Triton-class ships that were originally planned from Disney and booked are still going to be built as of this date. So the Wish was the first one. The Treasure's in the process of being built right now, and then the third one is going to, after that one, which is yet to be named, is still going to be built after that. The Treasure's planned launch date is 2024. Speculation, late summer, fall timeframe. And the Global Dream, which we do not have a name for it yet for Disney, is actually going to be Disney's 8th ship and is scheduled to start sailing sometime in 2025.
So will it be the 8th ship or will it be the 7th ship is the question, because that's, and so I know that the 3rd Triton class ship was originally slated for 2025 delivery, if I remember correctly. If the Treasure isn't coming until the end of 2024, which comes first? Do you wind up getting this whatever the new Global Dream is going to wind up being, or does the 3rd Triton class come first?
I'm not sure.
Neck and neck.
Yeah. I mean, at first I thought it was going to be honestly, I thought the Global Dream was actually being built by Meyer Werft. I didn't really realize it was at a completely different shipyard.
Yeah, they can't. So all the ships that are done in Papenburg have to transit the Ems River, which they're just about maxed out at there's some of the Norwegian ships and then a couple of the Royal ships, like the Quantum class ships have been done there, but those are probably about the biggest that are done in Papenburg at this point. The Ems River, if you've ever seen a ship transit, they actually take them backwards through that river by tugboats. They're just about maxed out with width. There's no way you're getting a ship as wide as this or an Oasis class down that little Ems River. It's really fascinating to watch if you've never had a chance to see it.
I'm surprised that Meyer Werft, usually they put out like a pretty good video after each ship floats out, kind of like a looking back on the build and everything like that. And I've never seen one for the Wish yet. So
yeah,
unfortunately.
Good point. That could be who knows, Disney could be perhaps keeping that to themselves. I don't know.
Yeah. So talking to my friend over at Meyer Werft, he had the opportunity to go over and see the ship the other day and to send us some pictures and everything like that, which was kind of cool. And his one comment was, it's going to be a lot of work, like you said. But from what he's seen from the plan so far, she's going to be an amazing ship. So excited to see what Disney Cruise Line, the Imagineers, dream up for this.
Yeah, it's exciting. This is something that obviously came out very much out of left field for all of us. I had followed the Global Dream and just sort of the saga of this a little bit, just kind of over the last year or so, knowing that how up in the air this was and who was going to buy it and where might it go. And it seemed like the natural fit for this would have been almost a Royal Caribbean ship because of how closely it is in design for Oasis. Or maybe you could have an MSC take it over, who's really looking to try and expand on their ships. And they've obviously got a couple of large ships that are coming up for them. But to see Disney take this was completely off my radar. Really, really exciting. So we'll see what they get to dream up with this. Again, it's a clean slate. It's something that they can start kind of without having to sort of be beholden to some of the design things that were done with some of their other ships. And let's see what they dream up. I think it's gonna be amazing.
I think so too. So, Chad, thank you so much for helping me out on this. A lot of following up over the last couple of months, and all of a sudden last week it all came to fruition, and now we're going to see what they're going to build.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but here we are. It's going to be a real thing.
All right. Well, hope everybody enjoyed this little discussion on the new Global Dream, which Disney Cruise Line just announced that they have purchased, and she should start sailing sometime in 2025. So I would assume kind of the same thing as the Wish. We'll get bits and pieces here, and as it gets a little bit closer to the actual launch date, the PR machine will kick in, and we'll learn all about what they've imagined for this ship.
Pretty soon we can start guessing on names for this one too.
Yeah. Well, no one saw the treasure. That one came in left field, so I have no idea on this one.
Here's my guess: is that if it's going to wind up being an Asia-based ship, it'll be some sort of an Asian themed name to it. About some sort of like it'd be an Asian name for something like magic or wonder or something like that, right?
I think you hit on a good point there. Well, any final thoughts, Chad, before we get out of here then?
No, really excited about the new ship. Yeah. Big expansion of the fleet these days.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, once again, everybody, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the DCL podcast. Thanks for coming back and taking a listen, everybody. And thank you so much, Chad, for helping me out this Sunday night and putting football for rest for an hour to talk some Disney Cruise Line with me.
My pleasure. My teams are terrible, so I got nothing better to do.
You and me both. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.